What is up, guys? Welcome back. Thank you for joining me for another episode of The Breaking Point. On today's episode, I figured that I would answer a question that is on everyone's mind, and that is, why is Kana destined to fail in the WWE? Alright, so maybe she's not exactly destined to fail, and maybe that's not a question that's on everyone's mind, but it is absolutely a concern of mine, because if you look at the track record of the WWE, you look at what they've been doing with the women of NXT and really how they've been treating them since they've moved them to the main roster. Hopefully that can help you understand why I am very nervous about her coming into the WWE. She is one of the best wrestlers on the planet today. And I don't just mean that as she's one of the best female wrestlers. I mean that generally speaking. She's just one of the best overall wrestlers, period. She's fantastic at what she does. She's a great performer. If you haven't seen anything that she's done, if you're new to her, definitely go check her out on YouTube, because she is absolutely incredible, at least in my opinion. She, if they do this correctly, she can bring a lot to this division, and she can really jumpstart this so-called Divas Revolution. First and foremost, if they really want to make this Divas Revolution thing really go off without a hitch, they need to stop calling them divas, because that is just ridiculous, and nobody can take them seriously. Alright, with that out of the way, there are a lot of concerns, because overall right now, there just seems to be a complete lack of effort from the WWE when it comes to their women on their roster. I mean, you look at what these women were doing down at NXT. They were putting on 5-star matches almost every single night. They were putting on 5-star matches almost every single pay-per-view. Look at TakeOver Brooklyn. Compare the Divas match from SummerSlam to that women's match of NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, Sasha versus Bayley. There is no there is no comparison. You can't compare these two, because they're so polar opposite. You have one match down at NXT at TakeOver that is just, in my opinion, it was match of the night. And that's not to take away from all the other matches on the card, because they were phenomenal. This match just had something to it that none of the other matches on that card had. And the way I look at it, they topped anything the guys were doing, anything that any of the women did at SummerSlam. Phenomenal match. These women put everything they had on the line and left you just jaw on the floor. This is what women's wrestling is supposed to be. But we don't seem to get that transition to the main roster. They're able to do this stuff in NXT because they're allowed to do it. They're given enough time. I don't care who you are, male or female. If you're not given enough time to tell a story, you're not going to be able to tell the story effectively. It's just not possible. They're given 4 to 5 minutes tops. That's not enough time to tell a meaningful story. You just cannot do it. So what you end up getting is these women who are extremely talented being put in a 5-minute match and being forced to rush so that they can fit everything into this one match. It leaves it being sloppy. There's a lot of miscommunication, and it's a serious blow to the division, because then it really reflects the division as a whole, which is unfair, because these women are obviously talented. I mean, you look at women like Nikki Bella, Brie Bella. They were bred in the WWE's main roster, and I call it the main roster system because that way you can kind of see the difference between NXT's system, because it really feels like there are two different teaching systems going on. You know, the people who are bred in the main roster system and the people who are bred in the NXT system. So I call it the main roster system so that you can kind of see that black and white contrast. Brie and Nikki were bred in that main event system. Sasha, Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Bayley, they were all bred in the NXT system. And you can seriously see a difference. It just seems to me that the women who are bred in the main event system, they can't hang with the women who were bred in the NXT system. And that's not to say that Nikki and Brie aren't talented. That's not to say that they don't have potential, because they have been improving. They have been improving this entire time. They've been trying hard. But when you're trying to improve within a box that the WWE has set for you that you are supposed to fit into, you're only going to be able to go so far before you hit the wall. And that seems to be what the Bellas are experiencing. They've come a long way from when they first started, but they're only allowed to go so far. You end up becoming confined in the main event when you get to Raw, when you're on SmackDown. This is the box that they want for you. You have to follow their rules and their guidelines, and that's as far as you can go. Where it seems down in NXT, they're limitless. Do what you have to do to put on a great match. That system seems to be working a hell of a lot better than what they're doing on the main event. And it shows. Just watch any... I've been to a few live events. I've been to... there was one NXT live event that I went to. And it was a women's match between Charlotte and Sasha Banks. Stole the show. It seems like every time there's a women's match on the card, it 9 times out of 10 steals the show. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. And they don't seem to be transitioning very well when they get onto the main roster. And you have to look at the people that are orchestrating it, because if they have the ability to put on these matches down at NXT, and then these talented women move to the main roster, and they're not able to put on these same matches, you can't really blame the women, because they obviously have the ability to do so. You have to blame the people who are orchestrating it, the bookers, the creative team, everybody that goes into trying to make these things, that keep setting these confines for these women. Stop confining them, let them do their own thing. That brings me to the point of this episode, that is that I'm worried about Kana coming in, because honestly, that she's not a wrestler who should be confined. I don't think anybody should, but especially Kana. She is so well-versed. She has so much depth, and I'm just afraid that in NXT, down at that system, I think she's going to thrive. But it's that transition to the main roster that really, really gets me worried, because first and foremost, a lot of her moveset seems to revolve around maneuvers and moves that the WWE seems to kind of shy away from. She happens to be a very stiff wrestler, which, if you're familiar with the Japanese style of wrestling, if you're familiar with New Japan or Pro Wrestling Noah, then you know that style of stiff wrestling is just how they do it in Japan, which is why I'm a huge fan of that style. It just makes everything much more realistic if you're not familiar with what stiff means. Good examples of WWE superstars who are stiff: Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, Daniel Bryan. These are all guys who are known to be extremely stiff. It just means that they're not afraid to hit. They're not afraid to be hit. It just makes everything look... Now, they're not trying to do damage to each other, but they're not afraid to take a hit if they have to, take a hard bump. They're very stiff with what they do, which is a good thing. I know stiff probably sounds bad for those who don't know what that means, but trust me, as a fan for a long time, it is a very good thing. Makes for a much more realistic match. She's very stiff, which makes everything look so much more realistic, but they seem to shy away from that unless you're top-tier talent. And unfortunately, I don't think they're going to, even though she is a top-tier talent, I don't really see the WWE viewing her, at least the powers that be on the main roster system. I don't see them viewing her as a top-tier talent. So I'm afraid that they're going to force her to confine into their box, make her movements less stiff, because they're afraid of injury and this and that, even though she knows what she's doing. She uses a lot of kicks, which I'm afraid they're going to limit. And same with her submission holds. She's very well known for a lot of her submission holds. She has great catch wrestling. Her chain wrestling is incredible. And I just feel like, if you look at, like I said before, that contrast between NXT and the main roster, it just seems like they are limiting the move sets. I mean, you look at and this doesn't just go for women. this goes for everybody really on the main roster, they tend to limit the move sets. You can do whatever moves you want, but you're only allowed to do like 5, 6, 7 moves per match. And repeat, and repeat. That just seems to be what, and people get annoyed that, they have Cena with the 5 moves of doom. But if you really look at the roster, isn't everybody doing that? Doesn't everybody only have a certain amount of moves that they do and they repeat? They really seem to focus heavily on spots, and they seem to focus really heavily on these whatever moves really get over with the crowd. You have Roman Reigns with that drop kick that he does every single time. They have the 5 main moves that this guy does, and he just repeats it every single week. That's not interesting. So that's another fear of mine, is because she has such a diverse moveset, she has so much depth there, that by really smushing it all together into 5, 6, 7 moves really is going to take away from who she is and what she's capable of. And another important concern is, will these women bred in the main roster system be able to keep up with her? Because they're already struggling keeping up with Sasha Banks, Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Paige. They're struggling to keep up with them. So what happens when Kana comes in? She's going to have to dumb herself down in order to, in order for their matches to mesh. Because as it's already being, as you can already see, with these main roster girls not being able to keep up with the NXT women, it leads to a lot of communication problems. They're not meshing properly. There's a lot of missed moves, a lot of mistakes, a lot of botches, and that's a huge fear of mine. And that can make Kana look bad. For those who don't know her and are unaware of who she is and what she does, if she gets in a match with Nikki and Nikki can't keep up with her, the whole match ends up looking terrible. She's one half of that match, so she, by association, is going to get blamed for some of that, which could diminish her impact. So there's a lot of things that could really go wrong. I'm hoping that none of these things happen. I'm really hoping that they allow her to be her. Right now, they changed her name to Asuka. Just wanted to breach on that really quickly, which means future. I dig that. Love it. Think it works really well with her and her character. I think that it fits her. It's not overly gimmicky. It's not over the top. Works for their purpose. Works for her. So far, so good. But down to NXT, so far they've been doing pretty solid stuff over in NXT. Like I said, it's just that transition to the main roster that really, really worries me. So I'm really hoping that they don't confine her to that box. Let her be her. And I guarantee you, if you want this women's revolution to really mean something, then you need to not let this woman be confined. You need to let them out of their box. You need to let them be them. And I guarantee you, you will have so much success in that division that it'll be absolutely insane. Alright guys, we're running into a little bit of overtime. Thank you for tuning into this episode. If you have any issues with what went down, throw it on down into the comment section. But it is getting to be about that time again, so make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to The Breaking Point. Follow me on Twitter. Like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description. Make sure that you join me right back here in the studio tomorrow morning, same time, same place. And as always, consider the point broken.